This afternoon, we are in conversation with Port Elizabeth-born jazz singer and songwriter Titi Luzipo. Luzipo, a trained musician, creative director, as well as musical director, has been surrounded by music her entire life. She credits her success to her parents, especially her mother, who fostered a musically rich childhood home for her. She joins me now to talk more about her journey in the music industry. And maybe, Titi, let that be the starting point. Good to have you on the program this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start a bit with your musical journey. I mentioned that you grew up in a very musically inclined home. Maybe give us some insight into how that was.
Well, thank you for having me. My grandfather was a choral composer. He composed the great hymn, Disindise O Yehova.
Yeah.
And of course, it was clear that it would be a genetic pass on, because then they passed on to my mother, who is an impeccable jazz vocalist, who's still alive, and whom I think is still one of the people that I look up to. And then, of course, there's my generation. So I'm, I think, the 5th generation of music at home. And growing up at home in a musical family, music was a compass. Music was where we ran to. You know, there's nothing else that we knew besides music. And so I think it was inevitable that I would land up singing and being who I am right now.
Let's speak to the generation of artists right now. You've collaborated with many renowned artists. How have these collaborations indeed enriched your music, but also your personal growth in the sector?
I think the collaboration of music in general, not only jazz, is an important tool not only for growth, but for visibility, for unity, and just for clarifying with precision what music is in South Africa. I think for the longest time, music has been a tool that has been used to heal. I was invited just last week at Thabo Mbeke's annual Peace and Security Dialogue. And the CEO said something very important. He said, years back, Or Tambo had said that the Amandla Ensemble, which featured Jonas Ngwangwa, had communicated what he was trying to communicate for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
They communicated in 25 minutes. And I think it's collaborations and it's music that really is to preach the gospel of unity, of peace, of security, and of love. And so these collaborations mean a lot to us. They mean a lot to the music industry, and they are very vital and pivotal to the music industry.
Your song, Being Woman, it does resonate quite deeply with many. Maybe give us some insight into the writing process of this song and what inspired it.
I wrote Being Woman as a young girl who was really just taken aback, but also just looking at what we were facing in the country at that time. I've always maintained that my music is a reflection of reality. And at the time, every headline was about how a woman is killed in the hands of the community or the hands of a man, whatever the case may be. And I wanted to write a song that would evoke emotion, but more so eradicate femicide and bulldoze patriarchy and the societal issues that we were facing, that we're still facing, I guess. And Being Woman then was that pen and paper for me, where in the lyrics I even mention and say, and I quote, "My body is not your rehabilitation center." So for me, it was always just a song that would resonate with not only me, but just, and not only musicians, but with people around the world. You know, I think we're facing a number of things, and I think Being Woman is just one of those songs that then became an anthem for everyone.
Titi, I want to crystallize the point that you made earlier. You've been a strong advocate for social issues, just like gender-based violence as well as femicide. You've also mentioned this to me. How do you see your music indeed contributing to these important conversations about these issues as well?
Like I said, music is a healer, music is a uniter, and it's important that we use music as that tool, and that's why I guess we have festivals like Joy of Jazz and Cape Town Jazz Festival. We've got the Summer Awards that are always propagating the importance of music in South Africa. But for me personally, I was never really excited about big festivals and big stages and all of that. I just always wanted my music to be a source of healing. And so I think there's a number of artists who have done that successfully so. Artists that are not necessarily excited about the numbers and what number it is on the global charts, but rather about the message that you leave and the impact that your music has. I think that for me is probably the sole reason why we as musicians write music. The whole point is to leave a message behind, but also to leave a legacy behind.
In extension to this, you've also recently formulated or announced an all-woman band. Maybe give us some insight into the inspiration behind this project. Why was it so important to you?
That was quite a while ago, I must say.
What, research packs is quite...
Yeah, I can imagine so. But I guess this is why interviews also are important, so that our history is not distorted in the process. Some time ago, I collaborated with some musicians, and I don't like to call them female musicians because then we box them, and our musicianship is not governed by our sexuality or by our gender. Our musicianship is governed by our skill and our ability to restore. But yes, I had formed a female band with friends, Tandintuli, Ausdebza. Zoe Motecha was also one of the guest artists at that show. And the entire point of that show was just to showcase the power of skill, but also showcase the power of what happens when women unite, not only on stage, but even off the stage. And that was pretty successful. I had partnered with the hashtag Total Shutdown then, and it was a beautiful collaboration in the sense that not only was I trying to communicate music, but I was also trying to communicate the societal issues that we were facing at the time. And that became a huge success. A couple of years later, I think South Africa, even though we may face these societal issues, I think we have come to a point of realization of what it is that we need to do as active members of the society where gender-based violence is concerned.
But over the years, you've also worn a number of hats, also being a lecturer at the University of the Northwest. Let's speak to that. How do you approach teaching contemporary music, especially to aspiring artists or young artists?
That's a tough one, because not so long ago I was on the other side of the desk, wanting to pursue the academia of music. And I must say, my journey as a lecturer at the Northwest University has been quite an interesting one, imparting knowledge based on my experience, based on my love for music, but more so based on the collaborations that I've been blessed to have, the likes of Gloria Bosman, Sibongile Khumalo, and those names now form a part of history. And for me to be able to tell that history without any distortion, for me, is an extremely humbling part of my career. I think we may have the bureaucracy of academia, but I think we are on the right path to what I call the success of academia, where children and adults even can now be knowledgeable where history is concerned, but also where the music stands. Also, I think there's a number of things that have been said about genres and and all of those things. And I think there's different organizations that have made a highlight onto that. So I'm glad that also as a member of SAMRO, I'm able to impart knowledge, because those are the things that we never experienced when we were in school. So I'm able to tell them about not only the music business, but what happens within the music business, the publishing, the royalties, and copyright and all of that. So it's a blessing for me, and I don't take it lightly that I'm able to impart knowledge in young children. Well,
Titi, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I'll tell you what, this has been a very insightful conversation for me.
Thank you.
Maybe as we wrap, give us a sense of what's planned for the future. Are there any upcoming projects or performances that our audiences can also look forward to?
Well, there are a number of things that I am planning. I am planning on recording my sophomore album, which is long overdue. And then there is a planned trip to Guinea-Conakry, where we will celebrate the music and times of Mama Miriam Makeba. But more so, I think there's a number of things that are happening in the country. There's summer awards that's happening. We've just come out of Joy of Jazz, and I think that is also just to celebrate artists and highlight the impact of music in South Africa. So yes, there's a number of things happening in the world and with me, and yeah, I think people will enjoy what's yet to come.
Well, Titi, Godspeed to you, and we play out with some of your music right now.
Thank you.
That's my guest, Titi Luzipo, sharing her journey, but also her insights into the world of jazz and also the empowerment of women in music.